It's so apparent these days, especially with social media, all the people telling us how everybody should do something and what the best thing for everybody is, and so many times acting like they invented something and not knowing the history of virtually any of it. And whether it's something I presented 30 years ago that someone is just now recognizing and presenting, although it's been through generations and generations of my students, or things that were old versions of exercise, kettlebells from what, the 20s, from the 1800s, and has had this resurgence primarily because it's a pretty decent thing for group exercise. That's another story I got to tell you about my dealings with the 1990s experts in group exercise. Anyway, this story is about history, but it's a piece of personal history that I share with, well, it starts with this term, muscle and fiction. Now, I use this term in lectures for a long time, and if you don't know the play on words here, this is part of people these days. Yeah, been in the industry for 10 years. What's muscle and fitness? Well, this was a magazine that's been around forever, and it still exists in some form or another, I'm quite sure. All those of us who have been around forever, you had to have this. This was a version of our Bible/textbook. We read it from cover to cover. We knew every ad and where it was going to be in the next edition or the next month's version. Anyway, it was owned by this guy named Joe Weider. And by the way, this is the classic Joe Weider pose. So every one of you on your Facebook page, on your YouTube page, on your Instagram, where your little icon showing you, every one of you posing like that, it's not new. It's not even all that cool. Mostly it's not cool because this guy, it was his classic pose. It was his trademark, if you will, and it doesn't look good on you. Not even that great on him. But in bronze, he wears it well. So, long before, well, not long before there was muscle and fitness, and I've got, I'm so mad, I've got some of these. Muscle Builder was the precursor to muscle and fitness, and it's so great because, gosh, it goes clear back to old bodybuilding stuff. It's really, really great. And realize these are just a few of the many magazines. Weider also owned, and whoever owns, maybe this is still around, Flex magazine was one of Weider's, and I always made fun of Flex because, well, Flex is used here obviously for what someone does in terms of contracting, like posing, when in fact the term flex is what you do to a joint. This magazine should be called Contract. They could probably have one called Concentric and one called Eccentric. I don't know. Sorry, bad joke. Had to do it. Oh, and remember I talk about social media always being the hey look at me thing? Here's my one hey look at me moment. See, I was in this sucker. Can you see that? Huh? You can't see it. Yeah, right there in the middle. Yeah. And it's in a dumb part of the magazine. Of course, they wouldn't put me with the bodybuilders. So anyway, and there were other magazines that I would clump together. Muscular Development was a Bob Hoffman magazine, who was an original competitor of Joe Weider's way back in the 20s and stuff. Iron Man, originally a small magazine owned by a guy named Perry Rader, and was eventually purchased by John Balick and Mike Nouveau, who were original, all the original awesome bodybuilding shots from all the competitions, Weider-based competitions, IFBB, etc., were shot by those two guys. They were the most famous bodybuilding photographers ever. And they left Weider to start this. They bought this from the Rader family. So it's pretty cool, the history of all these magazines. But I often would refer to them collectively as muscle and fiction. Now, obviously, that is a direct insult to one specific magazine owned by one guy. But really the idea was, when I was presenting, that so many times they're showing people how to do an exercise, not unlike social media now. I guess it was our version of that. And actually, bodybuilders showed you what they did. And it was paraphrased, augmented, dramatized, embellished by the authors. Because let me tell you something, those bodybuilders did not, for the most part, write those articles. I did know a couple of those guys that were pros back then that did write some of their own articles, and they were quite good writers and spoke clearly even in person. There were some smart guys back then. But on a given day, when a given pro or when a given guy, won nationals or became pro, they had to feature him, and he probably wasn't sitting at the typewriter pounding out the story. You know what I mean? So anyway, yeah, to me the problem was that too many people really treated that as an authority, all of those magazines, and they looked at the person. That's really the thing. Since the beginning of time, people have been able to sell things, snake oil, if you will, based upon fancy words, the way they looked on a given day, whether or not they won a trophy on a given day. If they're in a wheelchair now, but they must have known something about sprinting or whatever, and so you know how that goes. We're very visually influenced. So that was my problem when I would do these classes back in the beginning, late 80s, early 90s, and I'd talk about that. This is being a major influence, and why are we as supposed professionals doing things based upon a magazine, A, for the consumer, they can read that themselves, B, what does that have to do with 13-year-old Johnny, who's definitely not going to be built to be a bodybuilder someday? He doesn't have the structure, and why is he trying to do dips to where his nose touches the bar? There's just some interesting things there. And from personal experience, from following that stuff myself, from Muscle Builder days, meaning the magazine, when I was 15, 16, whatever the heck, these guys came along, Flex came along. I'm following everything they said for the same reason everybody else did. It was when I actually moved to California to intentionally work out at the Gold's Gym. 1986 I moved there. And back then, anybody who was a pro was in that gym or at World's down the street that was then owned by Joe Gold, because Pete Grimkowski had bought Gold's. And the only two guys that had left, the only two pros that left, Lee Haney went back to Georgia and Rich Gaspari went back to New Jersey. Everybody else throughout the whole day, it was bodybuilders for the most part back then, and I was thinking, I'm going to learn so much. And that's another story about, whether you learn something out there or not. Sometimes what you learn is not what you think you're going to learn when you're there. But you come to realize that if I do what they do, I fall apart really fast. When you work out with these guys and try to mimic what they do in terms of ranges and all these things, and you don't have the same joints, you don't have the same tolerance, you don't have the same parents, well, while in the end most of them didn't fare so well with their joints either, as you may have seen in some more recent documentaries on Netflix, etc. Some of us caved even faster, and especially if you had any prior injuries, prior surgeries, things that were virtually caveman surgeries back then, prior to arthroscopy, some of the things I had in the 70s. Anyway, so the thing is, in March of 98, I received a letter. And this letter from, as you can guess, as you can see, Weider. And it goes on to say, I know you can't read this, I don't expect you to read this, let me give you some highlights. At a recent NASM, one of the organizations, the first organization that I ever spoke for on a national level, that is in no way, that first edition of this organization is not remotely reflected by the current one that is owned by the truck driving school. At a recent NASM sports medicine workshop, which took place, blah, 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 Irvine, California in 97, Tom Purvis, an employee or agent, yes, it certainly was not an employee of NASM, made several derogatory or highly disparaging remarks about Muscle and Fitness magazine. In particular, and without limitation, we have been informed both in writing and verbally, lawyers, right, that Mr. Purvis attributed a lack of credibility. Why am I looking at that one? I can look at this. And inaccurate research in connection with many identified training articles published by this magazine. We're informed that other persons at this workshop, all employees or agents of the NASM, made comments that the magazine, quote, often used drug-enhanced athletes, unquote. Other persons. Yeah, I'm trying to make sure I'm getting that right, saying it correctly. These athletes, who did not represent realistic role models for the average personal training client. Now, do you see anything wrong if I said about a bunch of professional bodybuilders that they're on steroids? There might be, but there's not one that's not on, I'm sorry, not at that level, and not today for sure. Back then, who knows? Actually, that's true. Who knows back then? And certainly if you went to the 70s. But, and the idea that this did not represent realistic role models for the average person, Michael Jordan's not a realistic role model for a 5-year-old playing basketball in his driveway. It's really, and I'm not saying he can't be a role model, but realistic, look at the number of people who play basketball after high school. And look at the number of high school players who make it after junior high. And then let's go to the YMCA and all these other little, little clubs and stuff. Look at the fall off, right? The attrition rate from, so come on, have a role model. But in the end, you're not going to look like these bodybuilders. The average person isn't. If they could, everybody would. It's that simple, all right? Additionally, we've learned that Muscle and Fitness was the only magazine singled out for comment during this workshop. Well, no other magazine plays into the name so well. Muscle and Fiction, what? There's nothing else. Muscular lack of development, not so flex. What am I going to say? That's the best pun, okay? In addition, in the NASM's brochure, I don't know where they got this. In the NASM's brochure authored by Purvis, I don't author another organization's brochure, entitled Resistance Training Specialist Course, that was my brochure and it had nothing to do with NASM. As soon as you start reading stuff like this, they don't have a leg to stand on, right? Mr. Purvis has attributed lack of credibility to the magazine by referring to it as, you got it, Muscle and Fiction. Straight from their letter right here. And suggesting that followers of its training techniques and articles would suffer irreparable joint damage. Any of you that know me at all know that I would never make a blanket statement like that, and if I did, I would correct myself either right then or eventually, that the articles would suffer, the readers, the followers of its training techniques and articles would suffer irreparable joint injury. Right there, they have another leg they can't stand on, because I would never say anything ever but, if you're not these guys, if you're not built like these guys, the odds of you being able to do the exact same things and tolerate them the same way and get the same results, the odds are very slim. That's the way I talk. And by the way, if anybody's out there trying to quote anything I've ever said, trying to say, well, Tom Purvis says, and if they don't say it that way with exceptions, they've either never heard me, or they're really bad students, their memory's poor, or they just didn't get it. Anyway, so this Weider, of course, this Weider letter had a second page. It was addressed to me and a couple other guys, the then owner, the founder of NASM and the owner of NASM. You don't need to know necessarily their names or anything. But the second page, not so much fun stuff, except the things that they required or wanted for me to do. I'm supposed to publish a statement of retraction to be sent to all staff members and students who've attended my seminars, or maybe NASM seminars. I've got to go back and look. Attended your seminars, reviewed, and it's reviewed and approved by us in advance. Be sent to all staff members and students. To all staff members and students. You understand that this was pre-email. Yeah, you didn't know there was a time pre-email, did you? You thought they were using kerosene lanterns and sending emails because, like on Gilligan's Island, they were riding the bike for electricity. But you don't know what Gilligan's Island is. So anyway, yeah, there's some funny things. Cease, desist, go kill yourself, whatever they were asking us to do. Here's the fun part. It was CC'd to Joe, Eric Weider, Joe and Eric Weider. I don't know this person. I don't know that person. Tom Dieters. Now this was a little bit of a thing because Tom Dieters, who was then the editor-in-chief, was a friend of mine since I lived out in California since back then. And so, yeah, he wasn't entirely happy with hearing that I did this. But, that was a long time ago, and water under the bridge. Here's the best part. It was signed by their attorney. His name, Bernard J. Cartoon. If that's not almost exactly like Wile E. Coyote, I don't know what is. It's really hard to take seriously a threat letter from a guy who stands around like this, which could be you standing here, whose attorney is Bernard J. Cartoon. Would you not change your name? Seriously. So anyway, they were going to sue me and all this defamation, and it was all going to be so bad and everything. And there's a couple things that were interesting at the time. The timing was amazing. You notice that was, what was this letter? Here's the letter. I can't read. March 24th of 98. Well, this is interesting because May 15th of 98, This came out in USA Today. Now, you know what happens in lawsuits with defamation and stuff sometimes? You really often have to prove damage. And the damage can't just be, oh, they hurt my feelings. It has to be some financial repercussions of what you said, and these people lose money. Well, they kind of blew that and any version of evidence for that, because within a month and a half of me receiving that letter, this thing on USA Today Money page, specifically the Money page, did you see that? Money! May 15th of 98, Family Fortune. Here's the Weiders, Ben, Joe, Eric, I guess. Is that what it says? Yeah. Ben's son, Eric. Weider, 75, keeps $400 million empire growing. And they talk about how much they've made in the past quarter and the quarters before that and over the years and the continued increase in the value of the company and profit. And I'm like going, well, good luck. And here's why. Because February of that same year, isn't timing funny? February of that same year, which, you know, the month before I got this letter, 3 months before that other thing came out saying how great they were doing. So apparently what I say doesn't remotely influence anything, because they didn't lose a penny. They actually made money. They owe me for advertising. They made money during the time I said that. Think about the correlation there. Difference between correlation and causation though, right? Oprah Winfrey. Do you remember this? Probably not. It's history. Oprah Winfrey wins case filed by cattlemen. You see, Oprah on a specific show was told by somebody some story about the problems with beef and the raising of beef and how bad beef was and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know that it was a nutrition-oriented story or any of that. I think it was about the industry itself. Well, she got sued by, I don't think it was the entire beef industry or National Beef Council. I think it was several large ranchers, large producers of beef. And so she won, by the way. And they actually lost like 30% of their revenues after she said that. The beef industry as a whole lost gross revenues, not just 1 or 2%, several dozen percentage points of gross sales in the country. But Weider's Weider's going to sue me, but he's made more money since I said it. This is all just so interesting. So anyway, I did end up, oh look, you don't care. Here's that paper. I keep everything. So I did write him a letter back. I wish I hadn't used a font that was so small because now I can't see it. But so yeah, I'm not going to read the whole thing, although I probably will end up doing it. I've used the words muscle and fiction in my lectures for the last 10 years. The phrase is used, like it's a big new thing. The phrase is used in reference to all bodybuilding magazines, but obviously it's a parody of the most popular of those periodicals, Muscle and Fitness. See, I was stroking them a little bit. That's good. I typically state that there are numerous credible authors, reporters, and writers contributing. I never did that, but it sounded good in the response letter. The thing I mentioned in this paragraph is there's pictures that with bodies kids will die for. They'll do anything. If they told them to go eat dog crap, they'd do it, right? So that's part of the thing. I think they have a bigger responsibility. I don't think magazines take it upon themselves to necessarily know orthopedic-related, force-related, biomechanics-related things, and the potential for it. Biomechanics in and of itself as a subject doesn't begin to even remotely discuss things like arthritis, and et cetera, et cetera. So, and for all that stuff, I said I'm not saying the magazines don't have the right to print that stuff, quite the contrary. But do I not have the right to parody? You know, Saturday Night Live does that all the time. I guess the bigger you are, the less legal trouble you can get into. And this was just to scare me anyway. And in this thing, I actually say, oh, by the way, Oprah actually caused a decrease in gross revenues for the beef industry, and she lost. I'm writing this to an attorney, which would scare most people, but his last name was Cartoon. So, anyway, I have to admit, I can't believe I said this. I have to admit, I consider your letter of March 24th one of the greatest compliments I've received as a speaker, right up there with my invitation to present at the Mayo Clinic. I framed it and put it in my office. I didn't, but I thought that was a funny little addition. Anyway, it goes on and a bunch of nonsense. So the bottom line, there's my historical run-in a couple decades, more than 2 decades ago with an icon, and you really should know Whether you like them or not, believe them or not, respect them or not, you should know the history of an industry. That's what history's for. Oh, thank you. What a great ending you just ruined. Okay, we're going to go back and watch that after I say this. You need to know that these magazines in about, I don't know, early thousands, somewhere in there, was purchased by the company. So if it still exists online or whatever, it's it's owned by the company that also owns the National Enquirer. And I don't think they're going to start arguing about credibility at this point in time.